Hey there, it's Kat Kinsman, Executive Features Editor at Food & Wine, and this fall, we're launching the new Food & Wine Classic in Charleston with our partners at Southern Living and Travel + Leisure, and we want to see you there. Join us September 27th through the 29th to learn from iconic chefs, share a glass with innovative wine experts, and experience Charleston with one-of-a-kind events. Tickets are on sale now at foodandwine.com/Charleston Classic. That's foodandwine.com/Charleston Classic. See you down in Charleston.
You're listening to Heritage Radio Network.
HRN is food radio supported by you. Learn more at heritageradionetwork.org.
Westholme is working with the land to create nature-led Australian Wagyu. Westholme believes that when nature leads, flavor follows. Learn more at westholme.com.
This is Capri Cafaro, host of Eat Your Heartland Out. This week, I'm going to introduce you to two women whose businesses I discovered while on the road filming my TV series, America the Bountiful, out in Kansas and Michigan. In Wichita, meet Trisha Holmes, who grew up in the produce business and founded Holmes Made Salsa. And in Traverse City, meet Heather Burson, who started Third Coast Bakery to make tasty desserts available to those with dietary restrictions. They're both next. Heather, thank you so much for joining Eat Your Heartland Out.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to have this conversation today.
Well, it's really funny. I think I mentioned this when we spoke off air, but I discovered your bakery while I was out on the road filming an episode for season 2 of my TV series, America the Bountiful. And it seems like in a number of these Midwest states that we're filming in for this next season, I keep coming up and meeting seeing new things and meeting new people that I feel like I want to bring on the show. So I'm really excited for you to share your really inspiring story with our listening audience.
It just shows billboards work.
Billboards do work.
Billboards work.
You are up in Traverse City, which is an incredibly beautiful place. A Third Coast Bakery, I'm assuming Third Coast has to refer to the beautiful Great Lake up there, Lake Michigan, right?
It refers to the third coast of the United States, which includes all of the Great Lakes shoreline. You have the East Coast, you have the West Coast, the Gulf Coast, but we are the third coast.
As someone who is on a Great Lake as well, Lake Erie, I love me the Great Lakes and the Great Lakes region. So you have such an interesting bakery with some unique offerings. And a real, like I said, inspiring path to get there. So tell me first about, what inspired you to get into the food space to begin with?
Well, I call myself an accidental entrepreneur because my background really was in broadcasting and marketing, but also I'm Italian by heritage. So I was raised in the kitchen, Italian women cooking with lots of love and instinct and never a recipe. God forbid you use a recipe. You just use your instincts and your senses so that you know it's just right. But my mom, I would say she was also a baker, and that's how I learned fractions to begin with. It wasn't boxed mixes. It was from scratch. With a lot of love and intentionality. And when about 15 years ago, my ex-husband was going through a health crisis, and he was diagnosed with brain cancer. And we were newlyweds at the time, and he, what his body could tolerate changed on a daily basis. And I couldn't affect what he was going through at the hospital. The only time in my life that anything made sense was I'd come home and I would stand in the kitchen kind of in a daze after the long day at the hospital. And I just found myself gravitating towards my mixing bowls. And I started reconnecting at that heart level of, hey, I can't fix the horrors of the hospital, but I can maybe try to make something that's healthy that will bring a smile to his face that his body would tolerate while he's going through this. And I found I just started gutting our kitchen and eliminating anything bleached, refined, hydrogenated, artificial, chemically laden dyes, all of it, just got rid of it. And dug into some cookbooks and just learned a lot about the chemistry of baking as well, trying to figure out how to take these, old school baking recipes and overhaul them with really healthy ingredients in a way that nobody was talking about, at least not in Traverse City, Michigan. So back in, 2007. So
Yeah. Times have changed so much in the last 15 to 20 years when it comes to, the conversation around, dietary differences, dietary restrictions, dietary needs. And over time, there really has been this commitment to try to develop foods that don't just meet those dietary needs but exceed taste expectations, which I think is part of your mission there at Third Coast Bakery, which I want to touch on as our conversation continues. But I first want to ask you, as you were experimenting early on in 2007 for your fiance and husband at the time who was struggling and trying to adapt these recipes, how did you find ingredients, and what kind of trial and error did you have trying to find things that worked and that tasted decent and didn't have a weird texture? Let's be honest.
Right. Let's be honest. A lot of it was by failure. But I have this crazy competitive spirit that just says, well, don't tell me I can't do this. I will absolutely do this. I will figure this out. And maybe that was the way of trying to control things when things felt so out of control in our day-to-day lives. But how did I source the ingredients? I think by combing the aisles we have this really amazing local co-op, and we have another wonderful health food store. So this is before, gluten-free, vegan, alternative grains really came onto the market. And so you have to kind of comb these niche stores and the shelves and experiment. And I was just playing around with okay, well, if I don't use bleach flour, what will whole wheat flour do? And if I replace whole wheat flour with whole grain oats, what would that look like? It just kind of drilling down from there and learning about alternative grains and ancient grains, sugar substitutes, natural sweeteners, I don't know, just anything to overhaul it. Even, I made bean brownies and bean cookies, and that went okay for a while until it became a gastrointestinal nightmare. No more beans. So, and then some girlfriends came alongside. We have this amazing tribe of women, and they just said, you're really onto something here, and you've left your career in broadcasting, and this is what you should be doing. I don't even know what this is. And they said, don't worry, God will guide you and you're going to figure this out. And they started placing orders. And one of the first orders, my friend asked for a gluten-free vegan dessert for her celiac Seventh-day Adventist mother-in-law. And I remember saying, Susie, what is gluten? And she's like, oh, you got to learn about this. This is a really big deal in the world of health food. And so that inspired me to dig deeper and ask questions and talk to people. And I took it to a farmer's market, and that lasted 3 weeks. And I met a producer of Shark Tank who expressed a lot of interest in what I was doing. I didn't call him because I was a tiny little startup, but I still have that business card as inspiration. And then,
wonderful.
And then the local hospital started placing orders, and it just exploded. Yeah. But there was a lot of throwout, a lot of things that nobody would eat, and that was okay.
What was one of your first successes that you felt like, oh wow, this is something that could work, and maybe something that your friends recognized as legit?
I made a dairy-free, sugar-free, gluten-free cheesecake.
Oh, yum.
For my father-in-law, who is this Montana rancher and hunter. He's old school meat and potatoes. And I didn't tell him. I didn't tell him that it had all of the substitutes, because he's one of those guys that's like, I want extra gluten in my dessert. Oh, yeah. So, right. And he ate 3 pieces. Oh. And I was like, all right, we're on to something here. And then I told him, and he was like, no way, I can't believe it. So, I think a lot of it started off as sugar-free, whole grain, low carb kind of stuff. And listening to a lot of customers and what they were asking for and looking for, and just experimenting. Why not? Why not be fearless? What's the worst that's going to happen? You throw it out and you eat pizza instead. Like, fine. Like, you go for something different.
That's a great way to approach things. I mean, and particularly becoming an accidental entrepreneur, as you said. I mean, some of that could be super daunting, because you're really, this kind of came from a place of both necessity and love. And now all of a sudden it becomes a business path that you weren't necessarily, planning for or expecting. Were there ever times that you were like, I'm out, I'm giving up, this is ridiculous, nobody wants bean cookies?
I think that's a fair statement. And I think most entrepreneurs, especially small business owners, will say that happens every single day. Every day, a few times a day, you're like, this is great. I'm awesome. I can't believe this is happening. We're really onto something. Oh my gosh, I'm a failure. I'm going to fail. This is the day we're going to close. Everybody loves us. But no, what if I fail? Oh, I'm out. I can't do this anymore. I mean, it's just lather, rinse, repeat throughout the day, every day. I think that's just part of the normal experience of navigating a small business, especially when that's not your background. I had no background in business. Right. That wasn't my training or my education or my life experience. But I also think that makes us really uniquely resilient and flexible, because we are not afraid to say, I don't know. How do you do that? Well, I don't know. Can we figure it out? Yeah, let's go figure that out. And so we're not necessarily following the standard structure of so many businesses, because that's not even who we are at our heart. And at the heart of everything we do, it's a mission of inclusivity, but also taking the standard food service industry and throwing it out the window and saying, you know what, everybody else has been left out of the party. You're welcome at our table. And we're going to do it so different, and it's going to taste amazing.
I love that. And I think you make a really good point, because you're kind of unencumbered by any kind of preconceived notions of what should and shouldn't be, because you didn't, coming in without that background, you weren't, married to certain ideas that, may have been kind of ingrained in you had you had, a background in food service industry or even, specific business areas that, you're looking for certain things to, check boxes. And, maybe coming in flying blind gave you, a little bit more chutzpah, so to speak, that, it was a blessing in disguise.
Yeah, for sure. Like, one of my dirty secrets as an entrepreneur is I didn't have a business plan for 5 years. I didn't know what it was. People kept saying, well, what's your plan? Even when I brought on a business partner and a mentor, he would say, well, what's our 5-year plan? Like, I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out what we are right now. What is this? What are we doing here? What are people asking for? What are we looking for? What is this becoming? But I knew that I was being called to do something bigger than I could have ever pictured or anticipated for my life. And so I think being tremendously curious and adventurous, willing to fail, willing to say, I don't know, willing to do it wrong, and willing to own our wins and establish our footprint in the local food community has just allowed us to be as successful as we are right now, and to continue growing. So, just being open to having conversations with the very people that we are serving. What do you need? What do you love? What do you miss? If I could create anything for you, what would it be? And listening to that, and then saying, okay, come back to my booth next week, I'll have it. And then we drill in and we figure it out. And that has become a core book of recipes and wonderful seasonal specialties, and to branches of the business that we never anticipated would come our way. High profile corporate clients. We ship all over the country. We cater weddings. What don't we do? I love it. If someone says, can you do this? Because I can't find this and I miss this now that I'm diagnosed with celiac disease, or now that I have a child that has an anaphylactic peanut allergy and nobody will help us. But can you do this? This would be life-changing. We'll do that. I remember one guy came in and he was crying. It was Christmas time, and it's a grown-up, and we were talking about our moms and family recipes. And he said, my mom used to make this molasses raisin cake, and that was Christmas. And then I was diagnosed with celiac disease, and my mom has passed away, and I haven't had that cake in 20 years. Oh, wow. Can you do that? And we made it. We made it for him. And I'm getting choked up now. We cry every day with our customers, because there's so much inclusivity in food. There's so much fellowship that happens around food. There's so much community and celebration or mourning or connection. And when you have to think about every single bite you take, you are left out of the party. You are different. You are on the edge as opposed to simply being normal and a part of. So at Third Coast, like our mission absolutely is to let you be a part of, like, hey, welcome home. Welcome to our table.
Oh, and what you said is so incredibly powerful. And I already, I know and I can tell just from the anecdotes that you shared and by saying that, you're choked up just like thinking about it. What kind of feeling and inspiration do you get when you have these experiences with clients that can finally come to the party and come to the table as equals with the others so they don't have to feel left out? How do you feel when that happens?
That it's all worth it. The 2 a.m. anxiety attacks, the sleepless nights, the am I getting this wrong? Am I doing this right? Rallying a team, the navigating the financials of a small business, the zoning with the city, the shipping logistics. I mean, the 100 cross points every day, 24/7 as a small business owner. We live it, we breathe it. It's our reason for getting up in the morning. It keeps us going throughout the day. And sometimes, right at that breaking point when we think like, this is just, I don't know if I can keep doing this. And then we see the person and we see the look on their face and they walk in and maybe they've never been to a gluten-free, food allergy safe or vegan bakery before. And they come in and they're shy and they're scared and they're nervous and they're afraid to ask questions and they've been treated like a burden or a problem or they're newly diagnosed and they're scared and they don't even know what to ask. And they say, well, do you have something that's egg-free and dairy-free? Do you have something that's safe for my child that has celiac disease and can't have tree nuts? Any combination. And we'll say, you can have anything. And they cry. And they they smile and the little kids just jump up and down and these little wiggle butts and they press their little faces against the glass display cases because they're so excited. Like in that moment, I think, yes, this is what I'm supposed to do. This is my purpose. This is my calling. It is the intersection of passion and service. And that's priceless.
Passion and the intersection of passion and service is priceless. I need to remember that. And I couldn't agree more.
I think that's where we find our purpose. And what's the purpose of life? Why am I here? Well, if I can find something I'm passionate about, I'm passionate about coffee. I love never being more than 6 feet from a latte. I'm here for that. But I am passionate about feeding other people and loving them through food. But I'm also passionate about inclusivity. That matters so much to me. And so if I can find a way to take, something that really, really floats my boat, really gets my engines going, and can I find a way where that intersects being of service to another person? That's my purpose.
Right. And I mean, what's really interesting to me, and maybe to my listeners as well, our listeners as well, is that, we're talking about baked goods. We're talking about food. We're talking about a bakery. I mean, and the way that you're talking about it, being in service to others, inclusivity, it seems very weighty for, what we're discussing, but there's truth behind it. And, because it's something that is so simple that it should be in reach to everyone. And when it's not, it really does create this sense of us and them, or being, an outsider looking in. And the experiences that you've shared with, kids and families and others who are just so overjoyed to be able to participate and enjoy the same type of things that everybody else has, really is powerful. It shows the power of food, and food is experience as well.
It is. And I think that, let's just take the pandemic, for example. The whole world shut down, but medicine was allowed to stay open and food service was allowed to stay open. Food service was considered an essential service.
Right.
So when the whole world stopped, we were allowed to keep baking and we were allowed to keep making coffee. And when nothing makes sense and the whole world is upside down, we became a sense of normalcy in people's daily routines. I still get to go get my coffee and my donut on my way to this or that. Now it was curbside, but like that routine is everything. And also it's so much lighthearted fun. We have so much fun here because it's just a donut. It's just a cookie. If the bakers accidentally forget a tray of cakes in the oven, well, we got Cajun cake today, guys. And like, we just move on. It's fine. It's like, it's not the end of the world. It's okay.
Yeah. But you know what is the end of the world? Having a great birthday cake for a little kid.
That makes
everything. All the difference.
Oh, it's heck everything. Yeah. Yeah. Or senior citizens who, absolutely. I mean, nobody's been talking about celiac disease for the last 70 years and maybe just in the last few years. So they've never had a birthday cake like made from a bakery. It's yes. And it's great fun. You know, we love handing out samples and passing out frosting shots to the little kids as they're watching our cake decorator go to work. And like, I mean, it's just, why not have a wonderful time doing what we do while also understanding the seriousness behind the message?
Well, let me actually ask about that experience in your shop and kind of how you got to a storefront, because it's my understanding, and you kind of referenced this, that you had been, at farmers markets, and then, you have corporate clients and others, but, now you have the storefront. What was that evolution like?
Rapid and terrifying. How about that?
Honest, very, very honest.
So, what started as a what if in my tiny little kitchen apartment, like I could reach out and touch both walls at the same time. That's how tiny this little kitchen was. Under Michigan cottage food law, you are allowed to bake. You can create specific food products like baked goods and sell them direct to customers only at area farmers markets. That's it. Yep. So I started there, and the only spot that would let me in was in this tiny little village of Empire, Michigan, right on Sleeping Bear Dunes, National Lakeshore in Lake Michigan. And there's like 6 booths, right? Like the big dog farm market in town wouldn't even talk to me. Okay, fine. So I go out there, this tiny little market, and that lasted 3 weeks. And like I said, that very first market, I met the producer of Shark Tank. I also met my future business partner. Yes. Unbelievable. And I was like, what is happening here? Like, the universe is absolutely speaking into my life. Okay. And then I got my first wholesale order 3 weeks later. And to do wholesale, you have to have a licensed commercial kitchen, and you have to have a license. Well, I don't know anything about licensing. I don't know anything about professional food service and FDA labeling requirements and all food chain and HACCP stuff. And I mean, it was a grad school level education in an extremely accelerated amount of time.
I bet.
But we just did it. So I found a space in an incubator kitchen. Traverse City is a very food forward area. So they're all about small business and developing startup companies, and some of which is food hubs. And then after a year at this kitchen, I was not so kindly invited to leave because I was taking over everybody else's workspaces. And then I found a kitchen at a farm in the middle of nowhere, but that's the only place that I could afford. And they let me come in and use their certified farm kitchen. And that lasted a year. And we realized this really is something, and it's time to open a storefront. But how do I make a leap into that? And that's where my mentor and business partner really came alongside me. And he's an incredibly humble man with a lifetime of experience. And he helped me find properties, and he handled the whole build out stage while I coordinated with the state of Michigan licensing department. And then, and we learned all about hiring and workflow and commercial equipment and retail and menu boards. And I mean, it just became, and to fund it, we decided that although we had the funding, that we wanted to do a crowdfunding campaign, just a small percentage, because we really wanted the community to buy into our idea and to know that this is their bakery. And so we ran a Kickstarter campaign, and we blew the goal out of the water. We met 117% of our goal in just the first couple of weeks. And our very first day, you couldn't get into the building. It was so packed, and the line around the building and cars waiting for the parking lot. And here we are. That was 2018. And now it's 2024. And right after a year after we opened, the pandemic hit. And I mean, it's been a roller coaster with so many wins along the way.
I was just going to say, you guys have some massive wins, and one that I want you to talk about before I let you go, because I understand you have one heck of a recipe for something that I couldn't imagine you could do is like gluten-free, dairy-free, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you told me about this as something that you guys have recently, I think, put together. So would you mind sharing about that?
Yeah, absolutely. With the caveat of we don't ship this. So I'm so sorry for people that are outside of Traverse City. You have to come to Traverse City to get it.
That's going to break a lot of hearts.
I know. Oh, we'll work on cold pack shipping, but it is our 100% house-made, gluten-free, dairy-free, soy-free. So that means also egg-free, peanut-free, tree nut-free tiramisu.
I don't know how this is possible. It's unbelievable.
It's a lot of love. It's made with a lot of love. So house-made lady fingers, we brew all this incredibly rich espresso, and we add the rum to it, and we have this unctuous, rich, creamy replica of a mascarpone, and it's layered and sprinkled with cocoa, and it is everything. And as soon as we sell it, as soon as we make it, it's sold out. We cannot keep it in stock.
I would believe it.
Yeah, it's a real win. One of our crowning achievements when people say you can't make that, like, yes, but we can, and we will.
I feel like if somebody says you can't do it, I feel like that's marching orders for you to figure out a way to make it happen.
100%. Do not tell a woman she can't do it, because she will 100% every time step up and say, I'll show you.
Amen to that. I definitely subscribe to that worldview. And, for the folks that want to order online for the things that they can get shipped to them, where can they find you?
Absolutely. Very easy. thirdcoastbakery.com. Third is spelled out THIRD. And you click on shop online, and everything that we know will ship well and hold up well in the mail, regardless of how hot it is in California or how cold it is in Maine. We will ship it to you. It's all on there.
That is great. And I'm sure a very welcome message for folks that are looking for something that tastes good and meets their dietary needs as well. Thank you so much for joining the program. And I'm so glad that billboards work.
And thank you. I'm so grateful to you for helping to facilitate the conversation with food producers across the Midwest and really have a platform for us to share our stories. Local is how we all stay alive. We all thrive when we support local.
Amen to that, and my pleasure.
This is Eat Your Heartland Out with me, Capri Cafaro. After the break, we'll head over to Kansas to meet Trisha Holmes, another female food entrepreneur and the power behind Holmes Made Salsa in Wichita.
Whether you're a chef or just love going to restaurants, you know the best ingredients are everything, especially when it comes to beef. In Northern Australia, there's a different approach to raising high-quality beef. Westholme, based in Queensland and Northern Territory, is working with the land to create nature-led Australian Wagyu. Westholme stewards 16 million acres of rangeland guided by their natural ecosystem. They're led by a belief that if they balance the needs of their cattle with the needs of the environment, both can thrive. Westholme's team of rangeland experts and nature managers use a variety of tools to monitor and respond to the welfare of the environment, like satellites that assess grass health and on-the-ground research. Cattle are happier when they have the freedom to forage and explore, so Westholme ensures that they can roam wild, foraging at will for the first 2 to 3 years of their lives. Their cows graze on native grasses like Mitchell grass, which is only found in Australia, along with dozens of other plants, herbs, and seasonal legumes. The result is a high-quality Wagyu beef that reflects the terroir of Northern Australia and a flavor suited to complement any cuisine. Westholme believes that when nature leads, flavor follows. Learn more at westholme.com.
Welcome back to Eat Your Heartland Out. I'm your host, Capri Cafaro. Before the break, I was speaking with Heather Burson, owner and founder of Third Coast Bakery in Traverse City, Michigan. Now I'd like to welcome Trisha Holmes. Trisha is the founder of Holmes Made Salsa in Wichita, Kansas. She comes from a family that has been selling produce for generations, And she's undoubtedly made her mark, building on the family business background to create a successful salsa line. Here's Trisha. Trisha, I am so glad that you have made some time to join me on Eat Your Heartland Out.
Well, I appreciate you having me.
Well, it's funny how sometimes things happen on this show. I find ideas for guests in all kinds of different places. And in the case of you and Holmes made salsa, I was in Wichita and I was in Kansas filming for my television show, America the Bountiful, and drove past and saw a sign that said, I don't know, since 1920 something, 1924, I believe it was. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to give them a call and I'm going to look them up and see if they might be interested in joining Eat Your Heartland Out, since we're focused on food and culture in the Midwest. So, you never know what will happen when you're driving down the street in Wichita.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you saw the sign.
Well, listen, so, the sign does indicate that you have a long history and a really interesting one as well. So tell our listeners about how your family got started in the produce business.
Well, we started the produce business in 1924, and it started with my grandfather, Holmes, and he used to get salt from the salt mines in Hutchinson and haul salt out to like Arizona, California, places like that. And he would pick up produce and bring produce back. Now, back in those days, downtown, there wasn't much with pavement and that sort of thing, maybe some brick streets. And that's where all of the old guys went to sell their wares. And my grandfather, whom I've never met, he passed away when my dad was only 6 years old. My dad was the youngest of 5 children. And my oldest uncle, Wendell, basically everybody had to step up and help out with the family household. So everybody worked, everybody contributed. He continued the produce business. And then as my dad grew up, my dad and my Uncle Wendell went in together, and it was Holmes Produce. And then my dad took it to Holmes Produce and Trucking. And we had 5 trucks on the road, and they had amazing orchards, contacts all over the United States. And so they would go direct to the orchard, get the produce, and bring it to Wichita. And we used to wholesale to all of the local independent groceries, like the old IGAs and Mr. D's and Leakers and Walls. We supplied all of them with produce from all over the country. And then I learned to peddle produce. That's what we called it back in the day, peddling produce with a canopy. The farmers markets came about later on, and I can remember helping my dad with farmers market. My dad even managed one of the farmers markets here in Wichita. And as the old guys got older and my dad became disabled and my uncle was like in his 80s and not really wholesaling a lot, I got out of the corporate world. And I just decided I was going to work on my resume during the summer. And I thought, well, why don't I go down and just work with my family? And I didn't want to compete with the produce. So I came up with salsa.
Well, it uses produce.
It does use produce. And it was something I could work hand in hand with my uncle. And I actually worked in his booth and started with a little card table with one type of salsa and enjoyed helping him with the produce. And my dad would come down and hang out with us. And it was such a nice family thing. And it really took me back to what I had grown up with. Mm-hmm. And before you know it, little doors just started opening. Requests were coming in and people were asking me, well, can you make this kind of salsa? And, little old ladies were like, can you make me a fruit salsa? And then I learned, there's a whole nother side to it. You've got to get, you got to be legal. You've got to get a commercial kitchen. You've got to do all these things.
Right.
And honestly, doors just kept opening up for me to just go ahead and try it. And I had no idea that that's what I was going to do. When I left the corporate world, it was like, I'll work on my resume, take the summer off. I really, not in a million years, could I have guessed that I would sell salsa for a living.
It's funny how things work out like that, but you must have been, doing something right for folks to start to ask for your product. How did you start to develop your earliest salsas?
Well, the earliest salsas, actually, my father and I always grew tomatoes and peppers, and we made salsa. It was like a family tradition every year, and my brother would come hang out with us. And my brother he'd be like, Dad, not too much garlic. Trish, not too much cilantro, because we both loved garlic and cilantro. So that's how it started originally. But the nice thing about working a farmer's market and sampling at a farmer's market, growing your business within a farmer's market, is that you get that one-on-one feedback with your customers.
Right.
You can tell if they like something, or a lot of times they'll make suggestions like, oh, I like it, but maybe just a little hotter, or that's kind of how the line developed. I knew some things that I wanted to do myself. I knew I wanted to make a black bean and corn salsa, but some of the fruit salsas and some of the hotter salsas were suggestions from customers. So you really do get to see what works and what doesn't while developing your line.
Farmers markets are a great way to, kind of test market things. And I know that that's something that you are, still very involved in. What kind of role do you have, and how has that grown within the farmers markets and events around Wichita and the surrounding areas?
Well, I've been doing this for 20 years now, and I've been part of the Kansas Grown Farmers Market, which is the largest grower-owned market in the state of Kansas. And so for the last, I think this is my third term as president and chair of the Kansas Grown Farmers Market. And I've not only held that position, but I've been the vice president and the special events director, and I've managed a market. I've tried to give back with this market because I feel like it's been instrumental in helping to grow my business. So I did add some special events. One of them we have annually every summer called Tomato Fest. We have another one annually that's called Kids Day. And those are two of our biggest, where we draw, between 7 and noon, we probably draw 7,000 people plus.
Wow.
Yeah, they're big events, and they're totally community driven, always things for the kids, always a family-friendly place to take your family, and the kids will enjoy it. And I think it's a great atmosphere for children to grow up in, understand where their food comes from.
No question about that. That's one of the great benefits of a farmer's market because it is that direct community engagement. And as I'm looking at the Kansas Grown Farmers Markets, it looks like there's more than one. And there are there's tons of vendors. How do vendors get engaged in the Kansas Grown Farmers Markets?
Well, our board of directors is all vendors, and all members. And some of the vendors that we've had there have been there from day one with that market. As an example, we have one, his name is Spencer Ring, and everyone knows Spencer. He's in his 80s, and he's known for his tomatoes. And he's now at a point where this year he actually tried to retire and decided he wasn't going to be a vendor at the market. However, he has done demonstrations for us. We have a chef demo garden area, and he comes in and he's done some demos like teaching people how to grow tomatoes in containers and potatoes and microgreens. And he at Tomato Fest, he set up a kids grow booth where he grew all of these little tiny tomato plants, which don't grow more than about 1 foot to 18 inches, and they yield, small tomatoes. And he started them so that they can be replanted into some larger containers, and the kids get to play in the dirt, replant their plant, and they get to take a plant home and try to take care of it.
That's fantastic. And is that part of it looks like there's like a demo garden. Is that part of that?
That won't be in the demo garden area. That one is, we actually set up a booth like within the market, and it's called Kids Grow. And so, he's a teacher, and he's been a grower, and now he's giving back and teaching others how to grow. And so that's just a fine example of how our vendors contribute.
That is really, very community minded. And I do want to ask though about the demo garden, because that's not something that I've ever seen at a farmer's market.
It's fortunate because our farmers market is held at the Extension Office, the Sedgwick County Extension Office. And they have a wonderful outdoor area with seating that has like a pergola above and plants everywhere. The Extension Office, the master gardeners grow all the plants.
Yes.
And they have demonstrations there themselves teaching people how to grow things. And then, of course, the farmers market goes hand in hand with that. Sometimes we support them with these things and vice versa. And we have a chef. Her name's Krista Sanderson. She's with Eat Real America, and she is fantastic at purchasing only things from the farmer's market and then showing you how to make these fantastic dishes, putting things together that you might not always think about putting them all together, like blueberries and cantaloupe and tomatoes with red onion, things you wouldn't think about. And they taste amazing, and it's all fresh local food that you can get from your farmer's market. And she shows us how to make things that people are afraid of. Some vegetables, you get some young parents, and they're like, I don't know what to do with that, like kohlrabi, certain squashes. And that's where Krista comes in. I call her our health and wellness ambassador. She's our liaison to teach people how and what to do with produce from the market.
That is so needed. And I know that, sometimes in my community in Ohio, there's a CSA that, kind of tries to do some of that stuff as well, because, there might be stuff that people are just like not familiar with that ends up in the CSA box, but to give them some ideas on how to prepare it makes all the difference. And then you introduce them to, a new ingredient, a new vegetable or fruit, and a different way to prepare it. And now they have something new in their diet, which is just awesome. And obviously supporting local growers and farmers, which I know you do not only at the farmer's market, but obviously in what you are making, with your salsa. And then you have a bunch of other stuff you make and sell too. So give me, and I love salsa and I love the sweet and hot stuff. So give me a roadmap of the different products that Holmes makes.
Well, we have 12 different varieties of salsa. And so, we make anything from mild to wild. We have a mild garden salsa and medium garden salsa. And that would be like a traditional salsa you would think of with stuff out of your garden, tomatoes and onions and peppers. And and then we also have the spicy black bean and corn salsa, which is one of my favorites. It's also an award winner. It has just got a fantastic Southwest flavor to it. And we have a couple of fruit salsas. One is mango peach. One is an orange pineapple, which sounds really different for salsa. It's actually really good. And the fruit salsas are also great to cook with. You can throw them on some meats or fish or things like that. And then I have a friend, just again, how your product line can grow. I had a friend who he does green chilies. He has this big green chili festival here in Wichita in August. And he just one day dropped off like a big gunny sack full of roasted green chilies and said, see what you think, see what you can do with it. And the very first salsa I made, I just couldn't believe the flavor that those roasted green chilies brought.
I love green chilies. Love green chilies.
And they're from Hatch, New Mexico. So we made another award-winning salsa with roasted green chilies. It was our hot roasted green chili. And then you had some people that were like, oh, I love the green chili, but I need it milder. So we now have a medium roasted green chili. And then a regular hot, an extra hot, a double X hot, actually. And my son, when the ghost peppers came out and they were a big deal, my son is like, Mom, you got to do a really, really hot salsa. So he created a completely different label than what all of our other labels are. And it has like this thermal colored looking skull, and it's called Nightmare.
Oh, yes.
Yes. And it is so popular. It's amazing how many guys love that really hot stuff. It's kind of a novelty. So women will buy Nightmare for their husbands.
Yes, I would do the same.
Yes,
For
and
sure.
guys will buy it
I
and
love-
take it to work so they can share it with all the guys at work. And so that's the salsa line pretty much in a nutshell. We do have a chili verde too with the roasted green chilies, which has become very popular. But then in addition to that, we do fruit spreads, which are a little lower in sugars than jams are, but they're like a jam. We do like strawberry jalapeno, raspberry jalapeno, peach habanero. We do a few regular fruit spreads, and then we have some relishes and pickles. And the pickles started with, we have one, our most popular, called Dad's Spicy Garlic Dill. And we named it Dad's because that was the way my dad liked his pickles. He would always show up with his Thai peppers and his cucumbers. I could be making applesauce, and he would show up, and I'd have to make his pickles. And of course, now I miss that. But so we named them Dad's, and we were only selling them at the farmers markets, and now they've become a popular wholesale item as well.
Oh, wow. So you do both retail and wholesale then?
We do. We wholesale throughout the state of Kansas, a little bit into Missouri, Nebraska, Oklahoma, and Arkansas. And and then we retail at the local farmers markets, and we retail at local trade shows, home show, used to do the state fair every year. So just anywhere where you can get your product out and get people tasting it.
Well, and what can we be expecting for some new taste treats from you guys? Anything on the horizon?
We have some special event type stuff. Like right now we're making, it's called Grandma May's, which was my dad's mom, Grandma May's green tomato piccalilli, which piccalilli is a fancier word, or it's just another word for chow chow. And so it has cabbage and green tomatoes and peppers and all kinds of stuff in it. And that will be for Tomato Fest. And let's see, we have a garlic festival that we're going to be doing some pickled garlic, some spicy pickled garlic. And just for Apple Fest, I usually make applesauce for that one. And that's my grandmother's recipe. It's kind of fun to make something specifically for a special event.
Absolutely. Well, and people have to look forward to that. Maybe it's a different product every year, or maybe it's the same product every year, but you can only get it at that particular time of year, which makes it that much more special. And the fact that it continued to integrate some of these family recipes and traditions, particularly in light of how the produce business started all the way back 100 years ago, I guess. 1924.
Yeah, 100 years this year, 20 years for the salsa.
Year. That's, all of it is intertwined, and, you can tell that, you've created a modern tradition, built upon this longstanding legacy that your family has. If folks, if our listeners want to, find your products and maybe order them online, where would they be able to find you?
Sure. Just you can go to holmesmadesalsa.com and order right off the website.
Oh, well, I'm going to have to look that up myself because I love me some salsa. And like I said, I love hatch chilies and I love the sweet and hot. So you're definitely speaking my language, and I'm going to have to go ahead and check it out myself if I'm not back in Wichita sooner. So Tricia, thank you so much for sharing your story with me and with our audience.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
You've been listening to Eat Your Heartland Out. This episode was produced by me, Capri Cafaro. Our audio engineers are Liam Warner and Armin Spengen. Theme music by Jason Shaw. You can learn more about the show by visiting heritageradionetwork.org/Eat Your Heartland Out. Eat Your Heartland Out is powered by Simplecast. Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food radio supported by you. Keep in touch at heritageradionetwork.org/subscribe.